So there we go. Started. I tagged you. And let's see if I can bring you on. And I've invited you. And if you're, let's see, current grass. And you can request to come on camera, William.
Hello.
My man, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, man, just kind of it was an okay of a football day. I guess, we can't have top games every day, but I enjoyed watching a few of them. I guess
Yeah.
I have to eat crow on my Georgia game, but
Yeah, that one did. You know what? Let's chalk it up to the quarterback being. Let's chalk it up to the change at quarterback. You were
yeah,
expecting JT Daniel to be in there, and they
I
switched it
was.
up and put Bennett back in there.
It killed me that I did not nail it straight up because Colorado had them.
They did. They did. Now I
I mean,
didn't watch the beginning of that game because I was watching. I was flipping. No, I didn't catch the beginning of the game because I think the tech. It might have been the. Yeah, it was the Oregon Ohio State game that was running late.
yeah, I was going back
And
and forth that one too.
did the Texas A&M quarterback that got hurt, is he's considered to be like a much better quarterback than the quarterback who finished the game?
Man, that's a good question because I've seen so many Texas A&M quarterbacks that are supposed to be third stringers that are better than your first teamer. I mean, think about when Kyler Murray was out there
Yeah.
as a third string quarterback, and
Because it makes me I wonder if was that a big effect on why they were so slow in getting that game under control, or if the quarterbacks are about equal,
I don't think
it maybe
was
wasn't
that.
that big of a deal.
I think what I touched on, and the offense could have had to do, but I think what I touched on, and and I don't care if you're playing a high school team, when Colorado went up there and held that team to 22 points, to 22 yards rushing, that says something to
Yeah,
me.
pretty. They were
And
they were stout. They were stout.
they were getting to them. I think, honestly, in my opinion, especially as I watched the last 7 or 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, and Texas A&M started to move the ball, and they started to get pass rush, that Colorado didn't have the depth, and they wore out.
I think that's 100% what I think happened. Colorado just didn't. You got to think they're technically still within because the coach that they had the year, I want to say Mel Tucker was in his after I want to say he left after his first year.
Yeah.
So you think about it, this is Carl Durrell's second year. It's basically the third year of a rebuild. It's just 3 years. They're just 3 years removed from having fired Mike McIntyre.
Right.
So
and like I said, through 3 quarters, I thought it was going to, they was going to end up pulling away and, it'd be a 27-7 game but as I watched it in the fourth quarter and I watched them start getting to their quarterback and Texas A&M started driving the ball and they couldn't get off the field, I could see their depth taking over and them wearing out. And
they definitely needed to get something from their offense.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's just a first down to move the chains and give their defense a breather,
Mm-hmm.
is so important in a game like that. And I mean, hats off to them. They played them good, but at the same time, to me, they still should have won the game. I mean, if
Well, I was gonna
you know,
say, you were batting. You covered one of your upset picks, and you failed badly on another one. But I think you probably still did a little bit better than me with my Illinois pick and my non-Arkansas pick.
man, did that I, I I knew that Pittman. Did I say his name right?
Yeah,
Putman.
Pittman.
When he came there, I thought he's the offensive line coach at Georgia, and then I started reading the same things he was doing. And guys who's listening, if y'all got any questions, ask us. We'll be glad to answer. I was kind of impressed when I read him spring practice, and then when I watched him next year, that Arkansas team was the Arkansas team that I was used back to when Nutt was there. They were
Mm-hmm.
physical,
That's
and
it.
that's what I like. Sometimes people say they hired an offensive line coach. Well, when you hire an offensive line coach, yeah, he may not be your flashy guy, but his guys are going to bust you in the chops every play, and you're going to know by the third quarter, fourth quarter, you're getting hit.
Well,
And
it's something else. I want to say that he also has the on his staff. He's got the Missouri coach that was fired. That was a real controversial firing because he had done a pretty good job at Missouri. I want to say
you're not talking
he's on
Pinkel.
his staff.
You're not talking Pinkel, are you?
Who is that?
Pinkel?
No, not Pinkel. The
Okay,
guy who
no,
replaced
okay.
Pinkel.
Yeah, and
Because
I'm not.
he got fired, and I want to say that was a real controversial firing because he was. I mean, he didn't have a great record, but they were
I mean,
pretty solid.
I knew, and you got to think. I knew when they brought in. I can't think of the guy's coordinator that was at Clemson. When he brought in, and he was going to try to spread offense at Arkansas. I said, you can forget that. That ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna fly.
Well,
Um,
Arkansas is a lot like that Bielema was a good coach for Arkansas because they're in a position where they're kind of like a Wisconsin, they're kind of like a Nebraska, they're kind of like a matter of fact, I'll say they're worse off than a Tennessee. But they're kind of like one of those schools that they need to have a system in place where they can pound the ball because you're
yeah,
going to be
yeah,
better off trying
yeah,
to get big offensive
yeah,
linemen because
yeah.
you're going to be able to find some corn-fed 300
Oh,
pound linemen.
in Arkansas, yeah, you're gonna find some big old, corn-fed
You're
boys out
going to
there.
find you're going to find some big country boys,
Yeah,
but
you're gonna find some big country boys.
you might
And
not be able to find all of the athleticism and the speed.
but like what we've talked about, you don't need that much. You
No.
give me one fast tailback, and you give me six big old boys on that line, and a two tight end set with a fullback and one speed receiver. Hey, I'm gonna line up and run straight at you. And if you can stop me, then you can stop me. And
Yep.
if I'm moving those chains, your offense is sitting on there on the sidelines, and they're watching. And if they're watching, they ain't scoring. Um,
That's exactly it.
and people are all into this spread stuff, and it's fun to watch for a while. But I'm still one of those. I guess the era that me and you grew up in. I like when they line up and you put a hat on a hat, my best man on your best man, and I'm gonna blow you off the ball, and we're gonna get 4 yards, and we're gonna
Hmm.
move those chains, and we're gonna control an 8-yard clock. But what you said about Arkansas, yeah, and I've been telling my friend this a long time, and he always argues with me about about this, but I tell him, I say, Arkansas's got tradition. He goes, no, they ain't got tradition. And I said, yes, they do. I said, they won a national title, which a lot of teams have never won one. I said, they won a lot of Southwest Conference championships.
Well, now hold
And I
on. Did
said,
they win a national? Did they win a national title? I know. I remember the game of the
yes,
century.
yes, they won in 1964. What happened was that was when they gave out the championships before the bowls.
Mm.
Alabama lost their bowl, but they had been awarded a national championship before the bowl.
Okay.
Arkansas was the only undefeated team. That was the team that Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson was on.
Yep.
So they've won a national championship. They've won numerous Southwestern Conference championships. They haven't did the East, but they have won 3 or 4 Eastern or Western Conference championships. They have.
I want to say up until like LSU with Nick Saban, they were the top dog in the SEC. I mean, it was a lot of.
Because there was a lot of turmoil and teams down and stuff. But you're right. From about 95 until 2007, you had they were regularly beating Alabama and Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to the SEC championship game, and you could possibly make an argument that during that stretch they may have been the best team in the West.
That's exactly what I was about. Now, I was going to say up until Nick Saban went to LSU, and obviously some things contributed to that. Is that Alabama went through a down spell. Auburn
And so did
was,
Auburn.
huh?
And Auburn did too.
Yeah, and of course LSU was in a down spell because they went through 2 or 3 coaches. But
Charlie Hallman and Jerry Nardo.
Yeah, they were arguably the top program in the SEC West up until I would say about 2000. You said about 2002, 2003.
Well, remember in 2000 and I think it was in 2007. Then they went back to the SEC championship game because that's when they had McFadden and Jones on that team. So
and the fullback.
And Clint Sterner, I believe, wasn't he the quarterback on that team?
No, Clint Sterner was the quarterback during the I think 98 when they lost at Tennessee.
That's right. But I remember, but they had some big old stud quarterback on that team.
The 07, I know who you're thinking of. I think you're thinking about Matt Jones. He was the quarterback before McFadden and them got there, because he was like the offense by himself, because they would line up in the shotgun, and he would basically he would either fake it to a running back or he would run it off himself, and that was it.
Well, but I do remember they had a good quarterback then who was physical, because, and this is when I first knew that I was never impressed with Malzahn as a coach. When Malzahn came in there and he brought all those players from Springdale and those studs.
That's the quarterback I remember with Mitch Mustaine.
That may have been it. The third game of the season, he was wanting to run that spread shit like that, spread offense. The third game of the season, Houston Nutt took play calling duties away from him and said, we're not doing this. We're going to run the ball 60 times a game right up the middle, and they're going to have to stop us. Forget all this fancy stuff you're trying to do. We're not doing this. And he took play calling away from him. And it got him an SEC, West championship. But back to today, I knew Arkansas was improved. I told my friend at the beginning of the season, I said, I would not be surprised if they were the second best team in the SEC West.
I was
With some breaks. I'm not going to say, just straight up, but you get a fumble here and, somebody gets an injury with some breaks. They could, from what I've seen so far, they could be the second best team in the SEC West.
I was just thinking about that. I'm still going to put them third, but I will say this, based on what we thought coming into the season compared to what we've seen as of what we've actually seen, you put them, Texas A&M and Ole Miss in the hat. I wouldn't if you pull Arkansas's name out of that hat as the second best team in the West.
It's not impossible.
Yeah. I would not argue against them being the second best team in the West.
And if they continue, because they didn't just beat Texas, they stomped Texas. They beat them down. And
but now let me ask you this: does that say more about Arkansas, or does it say more about Texas?
I think, that's a good question right there. It really is. I'm going to say probably a majority. It says more about Arkansas because I've seen how they improved last year. Because they should have won that Auburn game. How they missed that play. You remember that?
I didn't see that one.
Okay. Patrick Nix snaps the ball. Time's running out. He turns his back to the line of scrimmage and spikes the ball. That's a pass behind the line of scrimmage.
That should be, yes. If he turns around and spiked the ball, that's a backwards pass.
Okay, that's a lie.
The whole point of a spike is that if you throw it down in front of you, it's an incomplete pass.
Right. If anything behind the line of scrimmage is a lateral.
Mm-hmm.
The officials rule that as an incomplete pass. And Auburn kicks a field goal and wins the game.
Oh, wow.
I would have gotten so many fines after that because at first, when it first happened, I was kind of taken back and I was confused. Well, it took me and my friend about 8 seconds to figure out that it was a lateral, and how 12 officials and the people in Birmingham watching it could miss that is beyond me. But from what I've seen Arkansas improve, I think it says a lot for Arkansas as opposed to Texas. Because you can't tell me that Texas talent is that bad.
No, there can't. I've always said it, that it's not the people can argue as to whether or not Charlie Strong was a good coach, as in X's and O's and putting people in the right positions and all of that. But I will contend that Texas's problems, and I think we can have to say, I would say the same thing about Tom Herman. Texas's problems stem back to when they fired Charlie Strong before Charlie Strong got done putting his stamp on that program.
Yeah,
because Texas has.
Charlie's a good coach.
Yeah, and you see what Charlie Strong was trying to do at Texas. He was trying to. Mac Brown is a great coach. We'll never take anything away from Mac Brown.
No, not at all.
But towards the end of his tenure,
he
started letting that team get lax, and he started letting I would say it's the same problem that was at Texas. It's the same problem that you have at Florida. We talked about this in our very first conversation, if I'm not mistaken. The difference between a Nick Saban, his kind of a program, versus the Texas, Florida State, Miami, those kind of schools, is the fact that it starts with the players themselves. The players are divas. You always mention Jalen Hurts and his situation and how he handled that. that is a testament to the type of player that Nick Saban brings into his program, and that is what has been lacking at the programs like Texas, Florida
Yeah.
State, Miami, all of those. And what Charlie Strong was trying to do at Texas was he was trying to address that issue. He was trying to get the players to, like I said, talent isn't a problem. They're always still in the top recruiting. It's the fact that the players just don't. They're not. I don't like to use it like this, but they're not winners.
Well, I've read what you said just about that. Is Saban has a whole group or whatever guys that they go in there and they're like investigators that they follow these players and they find out if they've had a speeding ticket because they want to know what type of character of a player they're going to get. And
that's
that is
what
the
what
most
it's about.
important thing is character.
Yeah.
You know,
Because anybody can go out and run a 4.40 and be a gazelle out there and just be able to jump and leap and catch all the balls and everything. But it's what's inside of you. It's what's in your heart. If you don't have it in your heart, what's going to end up happening is when you get hit and when you start getting when the going gets tough, are you going to fold or are you going to fight?
Right.
And that's the difference between, like I said, that's the difference between, and I'll put Dabo Swinney in the same category. Those are the kind of players that Saban and Swinney have, and those are the kind of players that have been lacking at Texas, Florida State, schools like that. Again, plenty of talent.
And like,
talent ain't the issues.
You said something last night about or the night about the murder. Can't think of his name. Killed players. Tight end. God.
Hernandez.
Yeah. Okay. So I was sitting there one time and we were talking about Coach Bryant and how tough he was during the day, and how you couldn't get away with that now because hell, you probably get somebody killed. So I'm sitting there and it's me and 3 or 4 guys and we're talking, and the statement almost came across as and you know how I feel about people when people start making racist statements, but it almost came as a racist statement to me. The guy said, "Well, Bryant couldn't coach today," and I said, "How do you figure he couldn't coach today?" And he said, "Well, he couldn't handle the black players." And I said, "What do you mean he couldn't handle the black players?" He said, "Well, you couldn't yell at them and get away with it." I said, "You ever seen one of the black kids walk off the field after doing something stupid at Alabama, and you see what Saban does? Now, are you trying to say that that this kid has no discipline and is going to be a criminal, or are you trying to say that he has no character?" I said, what are you trying to say here? I mean, you can't say that he can't take an ass chewing because he just won't put up with that. That was one of the stupidest comments I think I've ever heard in my life. I mean, because I see coaches all the time in white players, black players, Latino players' faces all the time, and they, "Yes, sir, coach," and they keep going about their business. That's a test.
And you know what the difference is between the difference is the guys who every player is going to say yes, no, yes, no, yes, sir, no, sir. They're all going to do that. The difference is which ones actually mean it, and that's though Nick Saban brings in the kind of play, and Bear Bryant would do the same thing if he were alive today. They bring in the players who actually mean it. The Texases and the Miamis of the world, they bring in the guys who are just faking it.
Yeah, they're going to bring in thugs who are going to go to jail all the time and get in trouble. I mean, you look at the when Bryant when they first started getting the Sylvester Croom. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more impeccable man who ever coached or on the field before. I mean, his players, white and black, he brought in top character players because because I've heard him say one time that, yeah, they're there to bring football, but he wants to create productive citizens when they leave there. And I can't think, I'm sure it's happened, but how many Bryant's players, got put in prison or, got killed somebody or something, he just wasn't like that. He wanted great players. And
yeah, you're exactly right.
and I thought I'll tell you a story, and then we'll go back to our game one time. I know Walter Lewis. He was I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was Bryant's last quarterback, and he was the first black quarterback to play for the University of Alabama. And this was in the early '80s, so you know how Alabama was probably still in the '50s then. We're just now we've just now caught up to the mid '80s. And, but I was talking to Walter Lewis because we're friends, acquaintances. We talk from time to time. Well, so I asked him about something. I said, Walter, I got to ask you this, man. I said, I've heard this story. I said, during part of the game, I said, is this true that you got in Coach Bryant's face and pointed your finger in his face and started screaming at him? And Walter started laughing, and he dropped his head, and he said, yeah, I did. And I said, what happened? He said, well, he said, Coach made some substitutions I didn't like. He said, and I went and told him about it, and I started screaming at him. He said, and he grabbed me by the shirt, and he jerked me up, and, Brian was a big man. And he said, and his face mask was touching my nose. And he said, let me tell you something, son. Until that clock ticks to 0, I'm the coach of this team. So get your ass back on that field, and I'll substitute whoever I want. And he said he just shoved him back. And Walter Lewis said he walked back, and he thought, oh, my God, I just got in Coach Bryant's face. And that's how it was. He came back in the next day, and they apologized, and it was all over with. But he's a class act too. That's how he coached them. So then, all right, so let's go back to another one I picked. Tennessee. I said Pitt, straight up over Tennessee. And
well, I told you. I think I mentioned it when we were speaking, is that Pitt has a chance to be. I know North Carolina and North Carolina and Miami came into the season with all the hype. I had a feeling that Pitt, they have a veteran quarterback. They're always a solid team. I would not be surprised if Pitt is not the ACC Coastal Champion.
Yes, I agree with that. And nothing. I'm going to say, with Tennessee changing their offense, they don't have the personnel to run the offense that they want to run.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'll say about Pitt won the game, so you can't say anything about that. But I was actually surprised that Tennessee was actually able to keep it as close as it was.
I definitely was too. Because I thought actually Pitt would beat them pretty easy. To be honest with you, let's touch on a game right here that we talked about last night. I said one of only 3 coaches take them to 2 10-win seasons, or 3 10-win seasons, or maybe it's 1. And I told my friend this tonight, and I said, at first I didn't really think much about it. The more I think about it with these divisions and the way it's set up, Bob or Stoops or Mike, he could make them into the next Florida State. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he could win the SEC championship, but he would.
That's what I was saying the other day, is that he has the potential, because again, when Texas and Oklahoma they're already, you have to think, Kentucky is already bringing in, just by being Kentucky and being in the SEC, They could go 0-12. They already bring in more money for football and athletics than any other school outside of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Just by virtue of being in the SEC. And then when you throw in the fact that when Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC, that's going to bring even more money that they're going to start making.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for a Mark Stoops to go anywhere. If
No.
you're and I don't say that just about Mark Stoops, but I will say that about any SEC coach who shows any potential. There's no reason to go anywhere else.
And from what I've seen, and I know, Georgia's been bad, past couple of years, but they are improving to the point that they're getting better athletes that they're going to win an SEC championship, maybe not championship, but an SEC East eventually. I mean, they're not but a few players away from Georgia and Florida.
Yeah.
And
like we said, they were really just a quarterback away. Just what was it, last year or the year before? Because they had Georgia on the ropes, playing a converted wide receiver.
And when they do that, like I said, they're just a few players away, and you get into playoff. Okay, anything can happen. I mean, he could. I mean, I didn't really think about that till you said it last night, because I was thinking, why don't he look for a bigger job? And then I got thinking after you said that, well, why would I go look for a bigger job when I'm making $3.5 million a year? I'm beating Florida and Tennessee again. I'm doing good in the SEC. I'm winning bowl games. If I was to mess around
it's like we were talking about it. Kentucky is like I said, Kentucky is like a Kansas. It's like a North Carolina. Kentucky doesn't have to be bad. Kentucky they're the biggest school in a state that, okay, yeah, you're not Georgia, you're not Florida, you're not Texas, you're not California, you're not loaded with 5-star recruits but Kentucky is going to produce some good football players.
And not only that, other than Louisville, they ain't lost a lot of credit against. Now you got Tennessee down there to look at. You got Ohio. You got some players in Indiana. You may go get a player out of Alabama.
Well, that's it. That's exactly what I said. If Alabama's going to start going out to California and start getting their quarterbacks, or going out to Texas and getting their quarterbacks, why can't you get the next A.J. McCarron? Why can't you go get the next John Parker Wilson or whoever?
And how many times have you seen a player be ranked as a 2-star and the guy end up being a 9-year back in the NFL? I mean,
yeah.
They fall under the radar a lot. I mean, I think that you may be right. Kentucky could be a sleeping giant in football.
Yeah, I say that about all of these SEC teams. If they now, I guess maybe that would be the one reason why. But like I said, Kentucky, first of all, you're in the weaker division.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, like I said, there's no reason that Kentucky has to be worse off than Tennessee. Tennessee's just been Tennessee just happened to be historically better than Kentucky. But there's no inherent natural advantage that Tennessee has over Kentucky. There's no natural advantage that South Carolina has over Kentucky.
Absolutely not.
Vanderbilt for sure doesn't have any natural advantage over Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And I don't think. I know that the schedules are going to change once Texas and Oklahoma get there. But who's their crossover rival? Isn't it like
I think it's Texas A&M. I think.
Okay, well, if it's Texas, well, no, I thought Texas A&M and Missouri were the crossover.
I thought it was Arkansas and Missouri.
Is it Arkansas and Missouri?
I thought so, but now that I think back, I think Texas A&M and South Carolina are the crossover.
I think it might be something like that. I was thinking it was one of the Mississippi schools for Kentucky.
It's Mississippi State.
Mississippi State. So yeah, okay. Mississippi State. So that's the school that you draw out of the West every year. There's no reason why you can't be. There's no reason why you shouldn't expect to beat Mississippi State every year. Like I said, Kentucky. At worst, you should expect to beat. There's no reason why you can't be a solid number 3 team out of the SEC East every year. And then if you look, Georgia and Kentucky, Georgia and Florida, if they have a year where they have sorry quarterback play or whatever.
Or one of them catches Alabama and the other one catches LSU.
Yeah. Well, Florida's always, that's like I said, I know that the schedules are going to change, but Florida
Right.
always gets LSU. Georgia always gets Auburn.
Say Florida catches, say you have a year like that where Florida catches LSU and Alabama, and Auburn turns around and catches Georgia, and they have to catch Florida. I mean,
yeah. Like I said, if you're Kentucky, and I'll flip it around and say if you're Ole Miss or if you're Mississippi State, if you're one of those, even say Tennessee, South Carolina. If you're one of those, if you're a coach at that level of school, there's no reason for you to ever want to leave to go to a job that's outside of the SEC. You have no reason to want to ever leave the SEC.
Well, Tennessee has to because their coaches get fired every other year. So they don't really have a choice. Iowa State.
I was not. Well, you highlighted that game for a reason. You said, is Iowa State going to be able to step up to the plate? And no, they aren't. And now, it just by happened because Ohio State dropped the ball today. I was looking at their schedule, Iowa's schedule. The toughest test that they still have is Penn State and Wisconsin. Is Iowa not a viable playoff contender?
Yeah. Yeah. With Penn State and Wisconsin, yeah. Because you got to think what they've got to play in that, Penn State in that division, they could be beat to hell up.
Yeah, well, that Penn State's playing Auburn next week,
right?
So you're gonna get beat up.
Another thing I want to point out, everybody was down on Auburn; they're horrible, and I know they didn't play top level competition, but putting up 60-something points and the way they was running the football.
Mm-hmm.
That I know it wasn't top level competition, but that's still moving the ball.
He doesn't have any Southern roots, and I think that was the big knock against him. But one thing that I think a coach like Brian Harsin brings Auburn that might be to their benefit is that he's not a Gus Malzahn. He's not married to a particular brand of he's not married to that kind of wide open offense or whatever. His teams at Boise State were just good. I'm not gonna say old fashioned, but they were kind of like how you said, just line it up, slobber knocker type teams. They had solid run games, solid passing games, and they were just good, hard-nosed football teams.
And Auburn likes that.
That is what Auburn needs.
And I tell you what else, And I tell you what else I was impressed with, and it shows me that Malzahn was kind of a wimp. Is that Patrick Nick's daddy comes down there, and Patrick ain't played football in 30 years. He comes down there, and it practice every day, and basically almost runs that program. And I remember, I think it was against LSU, and they came back and get him. Auburn couldn't move the ball, and he was pointing at that Gatewood kid. And I don't remember how much you remember about him, but he was this big old hoss. I mean, this boy was like, he was probably bigger than Cam. And the few times they played him, he didn't throw a lot, but when he ran, they couldn't stop him. I mean, he'd lead them down the field, score 3 or 4 touchdowns. And he thought he was putting him in. He started putting his helmet on, and Malzahn waved him away. And he left after that. He grew up an Auburn fan. If he would have played him at quarterback instead of being scared of Pat's daddy, they would have scored. They would have won the national championship, because that was the year they went 9-4 and beat Alabama and Auburn, and that was probably the best defense the SEC's had in 15 years.
Mm-hmm. They beat Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, they beat Alabama and Georgia. They held LSU. I think the final score in that game was 24-23 or 24-20 or something like that. But they held LSU to 23, 24 points. I think it was, let's see. I think what it was 23 points, because they had a touchdown and 4 field goals. And somebody said, well, they gave up 500 yards offense. I said, yes, they did. I said, but they kept them out of the end zone. I said, this was a team that was scoring 55 points a game. I don't care if you gave 500 yards of offense. You kept them out of the end zone. Your defense played well enough. You should have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
But Malzahn was intimidated by somebody, and I never liked Malzahn.
Well, he's I would say Gus Malzahn is probably at the right place where he needs to be right now.
Yeah. I mean, he was in over his head over that. I mean, and it was just a little high school gimmick offense. Unless he had the right quarterback, he wasn't gonna make it.
Yeah, but then you see what the thing that kills me about Malzahn is that he has the gimmick off. He has the gimmicky offense, but he doesn't. That's the one thing you think about a lot of coaches that have those gimmicky offenses is that they will run that offense into the ground. They will.
I've seen him run the same play 7 times.
Huh?
I've seen him run the same play 7 times. I mean,
or maybe I just have a poor understanding of what the offense was supposed to be. But it seems like he was. I always imagined that it was supposed to be like a spread option type offense, kind of like what West Virginia used to run under Rich Rodriguez.
But the way his was set up, you're right. Spread. But the way his offense was supposed to was set up was he was supposed to run the ball 65% of the time of the game.
Mm-hmm. But it's supposed to be with a mobile quarterback, and the quarterback is supposed to be just as much of a running threat as the running backs, right?
Right. And the 2 times that he was successful, he had Cam Newton and he had Nick Marshall.
Yeah, like you said. But now that's like here. I guess this is what I'm trying. Like Mike Leach.
Yeah.
I could never see Mike Leach bringing in a quarterback who couldn't throw a 10, 15-yard crossing, right? Because that's what his offense is. His offense is based around those little. You got to hit those little short, quick throws, get the ball out, get your athletes in space, and let them make the plays. I could never imagine Mike Leach, even if it was a Cam Newton or or whoever, or a Tim Tebow, a guy who's good enough athletically to win a game by himself. I still wouldn't see a Mike Leach bringing in that type of quarterback to run his offense because it's not going to fit the offense.
When I
so I don't
say
understand what.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to rush. But when I seen the idiot bring in Stidham, who was a first rounder in the NFL, who was a prototypical drop back passer California boy, trying to run, he wasn't probably in California, but trying to run a spread option offense. Like, what are you doing?
That's what I'm saying. Stidham.
That's like putting Dan Marino trying to run an option.
Stidham. Patrick, I guess Patrick, I haven't noticed it, but I guess he's got some athletic ability, but Patrick Nixon.
How Patrick Nix, I watched him play for 2 solid years. I've not watched him play this much. He was Mr. Alabama football, dual threat, passer and thrower.
So he is a dual threat guy.
That's what they say. I've watched him play. Yeah, that's what they say. I've watched him play. He can run a little bit just to evade people, but he's not going to take off like a Jalen Hurts type run. And he averages about 40% of his completions. How he got that award, I don't know. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I don't think he's an SEC quarterback.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to the thing about Gus Malzahn and his offense. I don't see why that I don't see. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. That's who Gus Malzahn should have as his quarterback. Is a Jalen Hurts type.
I was
Kyle Murray.
I was scared to death that when Jalen and we knew he was going to transfer because he should. I mean, Tua had won the job, and Jalen was too good to sit on the bench again. I was terrified that he was fixing to go to Auburn, and they were going to lay the lumber to Alabama. I
don't even think did they even go after him?
They didn't go after him, and why? That would have been my first thing. Is I would have went straight after him.
Like I said,
Jalen may not have had any interest. He may have wanted to go to Oklahoma, and with Riley, because think about this here too. I'm not taking things away from Auburn, but think about playing at Alabama and then going to play for Oklahoma. There ain't a lot of players that's play for those types of programs like that.
Well, no. Imagine being a starting quarterback at Alabama and being the starting quarterback at Oklahoma.
Exactly. I mean, it just doesn't come along like that often. I mean, he was just a special player. Another game. South Carolina, last play, has to pull off a field goal to win.
Yes. Against against an East Carolina team that I don't think they aren't supposed to be that good, are they?
Not to my knowledge. I thought they was kind of the bottom of the barrel.
But now, a lot of down here in these parts, a lot of people were worried about, a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people were calling for the upset quite like you were, but a lot of people were worried about UAB being a solid team and University of Georgia having the COVID issues that they had this week, and were worried that game might be a situation where they win this week, but it ends up losing the game for them next week. As good as Georgia looked and as bad as South Carolina looked, do we just throw things out the window because they're a rivalry, or should Georgia fans not be worried about next week?
I think Georgia fans should be worried about next week. I don't think that you should really they didn't look great. Georgia did play UAB. He did not have the quarterback I expected. I wouldn't take it for granted. My heart tells me Georgia should win, 34-13, 34-14. But then again, all it takes is a punt block and interception return, and who knows? I wouldn't take it for granted. I would play. I would show up, to make sure we could do it. Then I watched Florida today. I know they won 42-20. They had 660 yards of offense. What do we think? Are they that good?
How's the quarterback?
He was 14 out of 22 today for 151 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns, and he had a rushing touchdown.
And that's against South Florida.
Yeah.
When do they play Tennessee?
Usually they play Tennessee.
Do they still do that whole thing where Florida plays Tennessee the first SEC game of the year?
They used to. I don't know if they've changed that or not. And next week, where game day is going to be. Alabama's got to go to the Swamp.
Wait a minute, hold on. Alabama's going to the Swamp.
Week 3, Alabama 2-0 at Florida 2-0.
Wait a minute, I didn't even realize they were playing.
I didn't either.
That can't be right. I thought they said that they were going to Penn State.
Now Auburn is.
That can't be right. Number 1 Alabama at number 13 Florida. I did not realize they were playing this. Wow.
I didn't know they was playing this year either. So you got Florida with 660 yards. Going against. Is this going to be a shootout? Is Alabama's defense going to be able to get pressure on them?
You know what? I don't know how early or how late they knew this schedule. That's the kind of situation where if you're Florida, you would have really have liked to have had like I said, if obviously Tennessee isn't what Tennessee used to be. So if you had started off the season against Tennessee, starting off the SEC season against Tennessee,
yeah,
that would be the perfect warm-up for playing Alabama. But going to play Alabama just cold off of South Florida, and who did they play last week? That was
it wasn't nothing. And then you look at Alabama; they're already clicking in mid-season form.
Yeah, that's wow. Because
I could see a close game. I could see a blowout.
Well, like I said, it'll if it's a close game. If Florida plays Bama close, then that means the SEC East might be an interesting race.
Yeah.
But if Florida, I'm thinking, like I said, nothing has struck me as amazing about Florida.
No, me either. I've not been impressed with them in years.
But like I said, it's when you play against these bad opponents, these are when you have these type of warm up games, that's when your quarterback needs to be having like 300, 400 yard passing games.
Not 150 something.
Exactly.
Now, here's what it said. 152 yards passing. They got 667 yards, so they ran for 400 yards. You think they're going to run 400 yards against Alabama?
No, and that's why you need to have that passing game going, because you're not going to run the ball on Alabama.
Alabama's going to end up walking 9-10 people up in the box and daring you to throw.
Yeah, so you need to show that you can throw the ball.
And what about Ole Miss with 300-something yards rushing?
I'm telling you, that's who I think is the second best team in the SEC West. And the more that they keep on playing, the more that they keep on showing, the more that I'm not, because who else do they play other than?
From what I've seen right now, except for Arkansas, they'll beat anybody else besides Alabama. I mean, in my opinion.
That's what I'm thinking, and I'm trying to think who. I think we looked this up last week. Who was their crossover opponent? I don't think that they draw. Obviously, they don't draw Georgia. They don't draw Florida. I was saying that if Texas A&M could go into Denver and cover that spread, which they didn't do, I was saying that I think it could be a 3 SEC teams in the playoffs possible.
Yeah, not anymore.
The way Ole Miss is going, I'm not going to say they couldn't pull it off.
Oh, okay. I see that.
Okay, so they have a decent game with Tulane.
If they was to lose Alabama and be sitting there 11-1, an undefeated Alabama team beats, a 1 or 2 loss Georgia team.
I think it would have to be a 1 loss. It would have to be an undefeated Georgia.
Okay.
I think the SEC East champion has to be undefeated.
But the only for them to be for them to get 3 teams in.
Right.
Okay. All right. I see what you're saying now. Yes, I agree with you on that. Yeah, it could very happen. I mean, that would be something else. See 3 of them in there. I mean, and Kiffin. I know it was Austin Peay, but still, I mean, his players are gaining confidence and they're believing in him. And the more a team gets confidence and they believe in what they're doing, I'd say
you know what? As far as the Austin Peay thing goes, the thing that I always say about these warm-up type games is that don't discount the game if the team goes out there and does what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah. If a team goes out there and if it was even just like 21-17, or if it was 21-3, or something like that. But when you put 54 points on the board, that shows me that that shows me that you were executing.
That's what I was saying. I mean, about Auburn. Auburn put 62 points on the board. That shows me a lot right there. When you go out there and you streak by, that's when I'm looking at it in totally different eyes with it right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean they look good. I mean, we've covered some of the SEC. I mean, what about my USC and Stanford? What'd you think?
Well, that game is going on right now, and Stanford is actually putting up a fight. They're leading 14-7.
Put that thing on, and I got to sit here watching this, got talking, and forgot all about this.
Yeah, we got it's USC Stanford is on Fox, and
I forgot all about that.
BYU and Utah are on ESPN, and FS1 has Hawaii and Oregon State.
I forgot to watch. I got sitting there watching this and forgot to turn the games over and watch them. So my thing right now is, and I may be just from what I'm looking at, your SEC is the best. I'm not impressed with the Big Ten.
I
see how this goes tonight, but I may be more impressed with the Pac-12. And I'm still out on with Oklahoma and Texas and those things. I still don't know what to think about that yet.
Well,
ACC,
after
ACC, I think's garbage.
well, after the 2.5 weeks, I think it's safe to say the SEC is the top. Is the I think it's safe to say the SEC is definitely going to get 2 playoff teams again, and I think that the ACC and the Big Ten, if the teams that we were expecting to run all over those leagues do come back to run all over those leagues, are not as good as we expected them to be. But I do think I do think that Iowa, I think Iowa has staying power. And I think with their schedule, if they can get past Penn State and they can get past Wisconsin, I think they are a playoff team.
Do you think it's 3 SEC and Iowa?
This is what I think is actually going to end up happening. I think Ohio State is going to get it figured out, but they're going to lose. They're probably going to lose another game between Penn State and Michigan, or maybe even Indiana, because Indiana might figure it out.
Yeah.
So Ohio State's going to end up with 2 losses, and I think Ohio State is going to end up knocking off Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, and that's going to knock Iowa out, and that's where your third SEC team gets into the playoff, because I think Oklahoma is going to finish undefeated.
And if that happens,
I think it's going to be Oklahoma and 3 SEC teams.
And if that happens, that's when you're going to say 8 teams.
Oh, if that happens, that especially if it's because you got to think now, where's Oklahoma going to be at in 3 or 4 years?
Right. But I mean, I'm saying that
So basically,
if that happens right now, they're going to go 8 teams next year.
Yep.
If you have,
they're going to that is going to accelerate it. Well, no, it's going to be more than 8. It's going to it's going to be interesting to see. But yes, that is definitely going to accelerate the process on expanding the playoff.
Yeah, because I think they'll definitely start with 8 and then go from there. All right, so now I got my games on to finish watching them. Is there any other games? I mean, of course, we can't cover these while they're going on that you wanted to cover today.
Well, just like I said, the Ohio. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. The Ohio State.
I watched a good bit of it.
Now let me ask you this. Now the Pac-12 might be the one that throws a wrinkle into things, but I think they're going to end up beating. That's what I really think is going to end up happening, is that the Pac-12 is going to beat up on itself, and the big like. Do you think Oregon has staying power?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I think Oregon does. From what I've seen today, now, with that being said, is Ohio State that good?
That's the $1 million question.
Right now I say yes, Oregon does. Can Ohio State stay? We'll see. I don't know. I mean,
I haven't studied I haven't really looked at the Pac-12 schedules to see who plays who. So I have to look and see if Oregon if Oregon draws either one of those LA teams. I'm looking at it right now. Okay, it looks like
LA. Now UCLA could be your team.
But that's what I'm saying, and that's what I'm trying to see, because now USC does not. Of course they get Notre Dame, And of course, they
Yeah.
get UCLA because they're in the same division. So again, I think the Pac-12 is going to be they're going to knock each other off. So
Yeah.
I think the Pac-12, that big three, UCLA, Oregon, and USC. Of course, USC needs to come back in this game against Stanford.
Yeah.
But I think those three are a good top three. But I just think they're gonna cannibalize each other. And cannibalization only works in the SEC.
Yeah, and it used to a lot stronger than what it did, because at one time they were more competitive. I think you didn't see just the tremendous blowouts, but now it's become so top heavy.
And oh my God, that Stanford, Stanford just had a big play right up the middle.
I seen that. I mean, I've always liked Stanford. I never cared much I never was a USC fan. I didn't even like Oregon when they played them games. I always kind of liked Washington. I was never a Michigan
No, that's
fan.
that is the surprise of the year is that Washington. I don't think we were expecting them to be great, but obviously we weren't expecting them to come out of to be. I don't know if we were expecting them to be 2-0, but we at least, you should have beat Montana.
Oh,
and
God,
then
yeah.
Michigan pretty much had their way with them today.
Yeah, I mean, this could be Harbaugh's year. I mean, it really could. I mean, I think the ACC.
Well, that's what I think.
I don't think the ACC.
You know what? What's always going to hurt? Clemson is always going to be behind UGA in the pecking order.
Right.
So unless Clemson finishes with just that one loss, and that's the one thing now NC State sucking today against Mississippi State kind of
that was your one you missed.
Yep.
Of course, it wasn't as bad as mine.
That kind of takes some of the luster off of that potential upset. But Boston College is still out there, and they're still. I'm still not going to say they might not lose in the ACC championship game. Virginia Tech is looking good. Virginia's looking good. Pitt's looking good. UNC is looking good, and UNC. That's the one I don't get is that how can you say UNC looks bad when they lost to an ACC team, and that hurts the ACC, but that's the national media for you.
Yeah, this is what I love too about this early in college football when you got your 1-0 and your 1-0-2 teams, and everybody's still in it, everybody's still looking good, and except for your few teams you're going to be there, everybody still has a chance. It seems like it's different. Like to me, I still say the golden years was in the '80s. Like when we grew up. I mean, on any given Saturday, any team could beat another one.
Oh yeah, because you had your basically back then you had your every conference had one or two teams that was at the top. You'd have your Nebraskas and your Oklahoma out of the Big 8. You had your Michigan and Ohio State in the Big 10. Alabama and Georgia, I guess, out of the SEC. Clemson in the ACC.
I would say in the '80s you probably had Auburn and Georgia because
Auburn and Georgia. Yeah, I forget Auburn had a couple of undefeated seasons, didn't they?
Auburn never went undefeated, but they came close a few times. 10-2, 9-1-2, 11-1. Because I've got if you'll look on the channel, and I've got a playlist called Saturdays of Falls Gone By, and there was a guy who said that Florida, it said Auburn would have been the Florida of the '90s, and I said, well, let's go compare this. So I compared Georgia's teams of the '80s to Auburn's teams of the '80s, And my conclusion was Georgia was the team of the 80s. And somebody said, well, Georgia, Auburn finished stronger the last 3 years. And I said, well, does it matter if you finish stronger the last 3 years or you finish stronger the first 3 years? Because Georgia, I said, because my argument was, I said, in the first 4 years, Georgia had 3 SEC championships, a national championship, and they finished like 42-4-1. So
they had a national championship, and then they had the next year they missed out on the national championship because they lost in the bowl game.
And I added that in, and I added that season in there. I said, for those first 4 years, I said Georgia's record was 43. I think it was 43, 42, and 1 with a national championship and 3 SECs. Auburn's final 4 years was 39, 7, and 1 with 3 SECs. That was their 2 4 year runs. So does it matter if it comes at the end, or does it matter if it comes at the ending? I mean, to me, it doesn't matter when it comes. If you have a 4 year run with a national championship, 3 SEC titles, then you're the team.
Yep.
And but I can just remember games. I've got one on there too, because I love doing these Saturdays falls gone by, and I'll do games there. The one I did was check it out where I do the commentary of it. It's when Alabama played Kentucky, and it was in 1987, I believe, and Kentucky jumped up to Alabama 17-0 in the first quarter. And Kentucky led, I forgot what the score was at halftime. And Kentucky led, I just have to go back and what it was, but Alabama punted, had to punt. And Kentucky was getting the ball back with 5 minutes left up with 2 scores, and Kentucky fumbled the ball on Alabama 24. And Alabama scored. And Alabama, they traded a couple punts, and Alabama got the ball back with like a minute and 14 seconds left on the Kentucky 14-yard line, and Kentucky had Alabama to a 4th and 17. And Alabama converted a 17-yard first down, and then the next play, which they hadn't been passing hardly all day long, a 47 strike down inside the Kentucky 10. And ended up beating Kentucky 31-27. And it's like, some teams are just snake bit. They just cannot find. They just give it away. I don't know if these teams get in their mind we're going to end up losing, or what happened.
I think that's what it is. Winners know how to win. Losers know how to lose.
And I've heard that my whole life. If winners will find a way to win, and losers will find a way to lose. And it takes something to change that mindset to get it done. And that was my favorite. And the other one, I did another one too, and it was one of my favorite games. It was the earthquake game when Tommy Hodson completed that 4th and 11 or 4th and 10 from the 11-yard line with no time left and beat Auburn 7-6.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was some great games. And I was trying to remember because Alabama and Georgia Tech way back, had a rivalry, but I can't remember the last time Alabama and Georgia Tech played.
I want to say it was 19.
Was it a bowl?
No, it was a regular season game. Oh, I want to say it was like 1976 or something. And
I know they played after that because it was in 1981. And Georgia Tech beat Alabama.
What was the year where did Alabama miss out on a national title because they tied a game?
Alabama missed out on the national title because they tied a game. It was in 81. And it was Legion Field. Georgia Tech beat Alabama. And Georgia Tech did not win another game the rest of the season.
Is that not the last time that they played?
It may very well be.
Because I know that they have I think they still have a game. I think it's still on the schedule. I know they had a game they had a series scheduled a couple of years ago, they had scheduled a series a couple of years ago, and I think it's still on the books, but I think it's not until like 2030 or something. And I want to say they meant I want to say that was that was mentioned as the last game that they played.
You know, when Curry got down there, he was such a drama queen. I remember after they lost to Auburn, he said, you know, they threw a brick through his office window. Well, his office window was on the second floor, and they went down there, and Roger Schultz was telling the story. He said Curry was pitching this fit saying that his players was getting death threats, and Roger Schultz said, well, hell, he was the third string tackle, shoot him. And Curry refused to go to Jordan Hare to play because unless he had a armed state trooper and I think National Guard escorts, he's afraid his players are going to get killed. Well, you just psyched your whole damn out before you can set foot on the field.
You know what? That Bill Curry is one of the best men that I think has ever been. Like I said, if you just hear him talk.
You thought Bill Curry was one of the best men? What?
Yeah, he's one of the best men that's alive.
Oh, absolutely.
I truly do believe that.
You know, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Curry. I mean, I remember Prince Wimley scored that touchdown, danced on the field when he came off after Curry caught him by the face mask. Because you got to remember, he was old school, man. He played for Don Shula, Vince Lombardi. I mean, that
Bobby
was a
Dodd.
man's man. Yeah, Bobby Dodd, that was a man's man.
But and part of what I think is that's part of what he had a decent coaching career. And I think if he had stayed at Georgia Tech, or if he had been out of Kentucky for his entire career, I think he would have been one of those kind of coaches that just sticks around for 20-something years and does all right. But he was never for Alabama.
Here's a myth that's been put out that people still believe. You know, Curry was fired at Alabama. Curry was not fired. Curry had a 3-year contract on the table with a raise, and he walked away from it.
Yeah, I can see that because he knew the writing was. I mean, even if the administration was behind him, I think you have to kind of know that the fans aren't behind you.
Yeah, think about this.
You have to.
Yeah, the fans were not. You're right. And one, the fans were. Think about this as kind of like an alternative timeline. And I told you about, Bowden getting that job. Bowden walks in, he gets hired as the Alabama coach. Curry ends up becoming a lifer at Georgia Tech, retiring probably as athletic director. Tommy Bowden never gets the job at Auburn. I mean, it's like the butterfly effect. Everything would have changed. It would have changed everything.
Terry Bowden.
Yeah, Terry Bowden would have never been hired at Auburn. Curry would have been a lifer. Bowden would probably win a couple national championships at Alabama. Just would have changed everything if he'd have got that job.
Well, here's an interesting thought. I guess this is 1986. Who gets that Florida State job? Do they go out? Does a Mac Brown maybe get that Florida? Because I think that's around the time that he got hired at North Carolina.
The only thing about that is, and I would have to go back and look at the records and stuff back then, Florida State had not yet. 87 was when they started that run, of 14 straight top 5 finishes.
Was it 87? I thought it was a little bit. I thought it might have been a little bit earlier than that, but that sounds that does sound about right.
Because it was 87 through 99, and 86 could have been the first year, but Florida State was not the Florida State of 1992. So was Florida State more popular, a more better job than Carolina at that time? I mean,
I would think. That's
it's on the beach. I mean, but I think it's a toss-up, really, if you ask me.
Yep. I'm just trying to think who else would have been.
You know who I think it would have been?
Who was that?
Unless he followed him, which he probably would have because he loved Alabama, but he also wanted to be a head coach. Mickey Andrews.
Really?
Yeah. Mickey Andrews wanted to be a head coach, but he did love Alabama. Would he have followed to be an assistant, or would he have taken the head coaching job at Florida State?
You see, and I'll have to look. I never knew I didn't know how long Mickey Andrews had been on. How long he was on staff with Bobby Bowden.
I think he was on staff for 25 or 26 years.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you ever know this story right here. Mickey Andrews was a head coach at Irwin, and how his dumbass got fired. Him and an assistant went in there and broke in the locker room and destroyed their home locker room and painted spray paint all on the wall, blaming it on the other team, trying to fire his team up. And they got to bragging about it, and the principal found out they got fired. Now, there was a guy named Don Hanna. Okay, now Don Hanna was a good football coach. Man, he was about as good as they come. He was tough, X's and O's, draw stuff up, but he had this philosophy that and I've heard other coaches say this, but play 3 teams you can beat, 3 teams you're equal at, and 3 teams better, and challenge your team. Well, Don Hanna would go out, and the way it was set up back then in area and get playoffs, you'd have 3 teams in the area. You have to win 2 games, you'd get in the playoffs. So you had those 3 teams, and then you had to schedule 7. Well, Don Hanna had a 3A team. Well, he would go out and schedule 7. The other 7 teams would be 7A teams. So he had played.
Basically, he was playing teams that were higher than his team.
Right. So,
because the only games that really mattered for you were the 3 that you played against your own.
Right. And he would go 3-7 every year, but he'd be in the playoffs. But his philosophy is that he would go out here and play these teams, and it would toughen his teams up for the playoffs. Which what happened was they'd get in the playoffs, but then they'd get beat 30-6 because he had 15 players out with injuries because they were playing Division 1A schools. Now let me tell you else how crazy he was. He went out there. There's playing somebody one time. He goes out there behind the press box and beat the shit out of himself, cutting his face, ripping his shirt, scratching him. And
don't tell me you tried to blame that on a fan.
Blamed it on the fans to try to fire his team up. Now let me tell you the other one because I can keep going. Some of you probably got stuff to do, but he was out there one night and there's playing. I think he's coaching at Hayden then, and it was a tight game. And 3rd quarter, tight game, nip and tuck. He fakes a heart attack on the sidelines.
Oh, my God.
Stops the game, paramedics out there, chest compressions, breaking it out there, fakes a damn heart attack.
Hey, what was the reasoning for the heart attack?
To try to fire his team up.
And I bet you it probably did the exact opposite.
Well, of course, it's going to demoralize your team. You say your head coach there wondering if he's going to die or not. I mean, how's that going to fire him up?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I've seen technicals fire a team up. I've seen that happen,
Yeah, because technically, when a coach gets a technical foul, that gives the impression to the team that he's fighting for you.
He's fighting for you.
And just when he's having a heart attack, he's sitting up there dying on the sideline. He ain't fighting for you unless unless the ideal is that, oh, he's just so fired up that his heart went out. That's
Yeah, I mean,
goofy.
when you got a coach that gets technical in a basketball game, his players say, he's fighting for us, and that fires them up, and they start feeding off each other. I mean, I've just seen it so many times. I mean, that works. That shit don't. But it's I've seen crazier, crazier stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. I haven't. I don't think I've ever seen somebody fake a.
Faking a heart attack on the sideline is pretty crazy.
And I'm trying to think of something I can relate that to, but I really can't.
It's pretty out there. But gonna wrap up these games for tonight. I think that's like I said, it's been a pretty good game, pretty good day today. Like I said, next week looks like I said, I did not realize that Bama and Florida were going to be playing.
And that's mine.
That's it. You already got that one.
All right. Then this turned into a pretty good little show, man. Let's keep this thing going, and let's keep having some fun with it, and we'll keep trying to. Well, I guess we'll talk some more about what to do about this situation in the Killer Angels, because it looks like I'm getting pushed back, which I really don't give a damn. If I have to get rid of because I don't. If I have to get rid of these instigators, then I'm going to get rid of them. It's going to be this way or not, because and you guys are nice, and y'all are stepping in and trying to do things, and I'm just coming in and saying, "Fuck you."
I think that's probably the best. I think that's probably the best way to handle it.
And at first I thought maybe it should be, because I thought, I wonder if the mod should be the hard ass and me to kind of be the guy to calm it down. And I thought, no, it should be the mods to be the guys to try to calm me down, because that's just not my personality anyway, to be the calm one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you've seen that and seen that before. It's just not mine. So my personality is because one thing sets me off worse than anything is when I sit up there and I see you politely say something to somebody, and then somebody comes out there and says something smart, and then usually I respond back, maybe you didn't understand what he said, or you have reading comprehension problems. He told you to drop it, so that means shut up.
Yep. Well, I keep going back to this, and I think it's a problem on both sides. Is that there's too many people that apparently still want to fight the war.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And the war's over. The war's been fought. It's okay to respect both sides. It's okay to respect what happened, but the war itself is over.
And I'm going to tell you this right here, and keep this between me, because been my old war horse. I don't tell too many people this.
Remember, we're live.
Remember what now? Oh yeah,
we're still live.
No, but I'll let's see here if I can take this and could it work? It's not. Let's see. I'll come back in here and to cut that.
I think you can.
Huh?
I don't think you can, but I think it's just us in here anyway. So.
Well, okay. I won't name a name then. But there is one person that's pissed me off so bad, and I'm just waiting for this person to say the right thing, and it's probably not who you're thinking of, but I'm going to boot this person so fast, and I'll tell you later on why, but I've had it with this particular person, and it's not who, people who are probably talking about, but I'm tired of his shit coming in there starting stuff. I don't go start stuff in other people's groups.
Well, I think I know who you're thinking about.
I think you did
Is it a
too.
person who has another? Is it a person who has another group?
They are an admin.
Yep, that's what I caught it the other day. I caught you saying something to them the other day.
And here's the thing that pisses me off, and people know that it annoys the hell out of me. The individual reply button. They will try to hide that in there, thinking I'm not going to see it, and I will go back in there periodically to check it. And then when I check it, is when I call you out. You know, like there was one guy who got pissed off at me, and I'm sure you read this, and that's why I said I appreciate you taking up for me about when I said the unwritten rule, and he said, "Well, it's not handed out fairly." And I said, "How is that not handed out fairly?" I said, "This was a joke." I said, "You know, everybody joked, everybody thought it was funny. Now, how was that not handed out fairly?" I said, "If you came out and said that Grant was the greatest leader since Napoleon, I wouldn't kick you out. You know, I might say something smart, but I'm not going to get all butthurt over it. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, get over it. Because there's a joke saying, thou shalt not say ill will about Saban or Lee. I mean, you know, we can't be this damn sensitive."
The thing that and someone, but I'm not even going to mention what specifically happened because I don't want to. I know you'll probably blow up about it if you. I'm assuming you haven't seen it yet, but I don't want you
Yeah,
to blow up about it.
yeah, well, if I haven't blown up, then would know I haven't seen it because I've.
But yeah, but some there was a little something that happened today, and mm, it could have just been easily just been left alone. Nobody had to say anything if it didn't. If you you didn't have nobody had to respond to it. But some people were being. I'm not gonna say they were being how people tend to be when they don't understand something or somebody is they were saying that they were confused, they didn't understand what the person was saying, blah blah blah. Hey, that, like I said, you don't have to respond, just don't respond to it. That's what bothers me so much about a lot of the stuff that happens in the Killer Angels is that a lot of it could be avoided just if people just if it's not something that if you don't have anything constructive to add, if what you're gonna say isn't going to constructively push the conversation forward, you
I've
just don't need to say it.
I've said that to people. Now I'm guilty of sometimes, and I don't think this falls along the same lines, but somebody will say something, and I will not understand what they mean, and I will ask for clarification because I don't want to jump down their throat, and they did not mean it that way.
But it's all,
And
but
then
it's also something. But in those situations, it's typically something that you might actually want to respond to. You might want to
yeah,
actually. It's
yes, because if
something
it
that
yes,
it's a worthwhile. Like I said, this particular instance, it was just this particular person was just saying, that they liked that they just liked the Killer Angels and they appreciated, everything, and that they appreciated certain leaders and things like that. And it was a little bit jumbled and it was confusing, but it was, like I said, if you didn't if it didn't mean anything to you, you didn't have to respond. So
yeah,
I ended up deleting a couple of comments on that
yeah,
on
and
that.
you're good about. I was going to say you're good about keeping up with that and breaking them down. I had to talk to Pete Wolf the other day because he was deleting shit that I was like, why are you deleting this? I mean, it was nothing, and I
Hmm.
said, I'm all for deleting, but let's kind of have you know, uh, discretion here. Just don't delete everything. Um, there's certain things, but yeah, you're good about the things that need to be taken down because when the guy asked me why did you take mute him and take his comment down. I said, well, I'll go ask him. And you told me what he said and told me he baited him. And I came back and I told him, he goes, well, I didn't bait him. I said, well, he felt like that you did bait him. So therefore, I will stand behind his decision that he felt like that it was a comment to bait him into an argument.
It's exact that, I mean, it wasn't, it was the, God, I can't forget. It's Robert McMillan is one of the guys.
Yeah. And Bill Donovan.
Keith Krager, I think, is the other guy. And Bill Bullock, I believe.
There's Bill Donovan.
Bill Donovan, that's it. Bill Donovan.
He left.
Yeah, and you see, because I think Robert McMillan and Keith Krager are Confederate. You know, they're Southerners.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Donovan is a Yankee. And they've been involved in because that's exactly that. Matter of fact, that's the comment that I deleted from Robert. Was he said, "Oh, here goes Bill again, getting ready to do something," or it was like I said, if he doesn't consider that baiting, then I want to know what he would consider baiting, because
I consider it baiting.
Yeah, because it's a guy who you've been involved with, who you've been in other pissing matches with before, and you saw that he was involved in a pissing match with somebody else, and you said you were going out to get you some of that. That's basically what it boiled down to. And yeah, I deleted it and I muted him for it.
And you have done exactly. The other moderators, I don't know if they're scared or hesitant, but when I made the statement, from here on out, mute them, man, you didn't hesitate. And that's why that I said that I thought about bringing it up to this, and we'll still discuss this. When I should have ejected him last night, but that's why I left that up. When Johnson made that statement, when Johnson made that post, that was a direct challenge to me. And that pissed me off. And I said, before I eject him, let me calm down, think this. But he just basically challenged me in front of this whole group after I said this. So if you want to challenge me, then challenge me, and you're going to lose.
Yep.
And I should have done it then. And that's why I said, well, okay, before I did, I said, let me go ahead and talk to the moderators and get their opinions and see what they think. Because, people make mistakes, and something can be, not mean to be nefarious, but not following rules. And I don't want to eject something like that. Like the elderly lady Mary, when she said that she loved General Lee or something. Of course, I'm not going to eject her for something like that. But when, Johnson puts up some kind of picture of a slave who went off with his other master, and he tries to pass it off as he's a black soldier, then I'm going to call out bullshit. You're challenging me, and you should be ejected.
Yep.
Now, and that's a conversation that I think would be interesting to have. Is what kind of relationship did these young men have together? But were they friends? Were they some kind of kinship?
It's
it's odd
conversation to have, but the problem with that conversation, and like I said, I think it would be a good conversation to have. The problem is matter of fact, one of the links, one of the articles that I pulled up when I was researching that particular story to rebut what he had posted.
I've already read that several times.
Was the fact that there's the only evidence that points to them having a relationship comes from the slave owner's family. Nothing is the slave has no, what's the word I'm trying to say? That he has no input into the situation. No, what
I mean, and, so, and I mean, because like I said, that's such a a interesting subject. Because I see these pictures and stuff, and I can't help believe that when these kids, 10, 12, when they grew up together, they did have some type of bond or
I think I don't know if you've ever heard the story about Edmund Kirby Smith. The general.
yeah.
He's there was he had a companion. Obviously during the Civil War he was older. He was about 40 something. But I want to say he had a servant that was with him, or maybe the servant, maybe he didn't go out there with him. But his family had a slave that he had a basically kind of like a brotherly relationship with, that actually became the first black doctor in the state of Florida.
Really?
Yeah,
And I believe that there were things like that were few and far between. I mean, obviously there was not no happy slave and master working side by side in the field, but I believe there were few and far instances like that between. Like when I went to the Hermitage the first time, and there was in the Jackson Cemetery, and the kid was young when Jackson died, but he was Jackson's favorite slave, and he was buried in the family cemetery where nobody else was buried but the Jackson family.
mm-hmm.
And I wonder, how did Jackson look at this kid? Did he look at him like almost as a child? Did he look at yeah, it's hard to look at things in those eyes, but it's interesting to me because I know there had to be, I don't want to say, with, like I said, I think with some there was a bond, few and far between, 1%.
And I tried to word it that way in my response to the other guy who had an issue with it, is that there were individual relationships that, yeah, there's no way you can't deny that there were individual relationships between, like I said, if you grow up with someone and you're still not old, you're both around, you're both 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 when the war, the boy, A, he hasn't become really a master yet, and B, you haven't actually become, like a serious, like I can see things like that happening
Yeah.
in the case.
Yeah, I can tell you that. I mean, I can see that. I mean, I can see where these kids grew up together, and 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 I don't know if bond, friend, what kinship, something, a connection between the two. Um, I'm not going to sit here and lost cause. Everybody was happy, but
Yeah, I mean that's where the problem arises, is when you take those individual relationships that may or may not have been there, and you try to extrapolate that to mean to become something bigger than just something between two single individuals.
right. Yeah, I mean, because we in this article one time, and they were talking about Lee or something, and they said there was a time that Lee had a slave beat, and so they got the conversation, and the conversation came up with me, and of course they was going to expect me to, to vehemently deny everything, and they asked me, and I said, yeah, sure, probably, and they said, you believe Lee would do that? And I said, well, let's go back and look at this in 1858. I said, sometimes when things were done, broke rules or something, that's how discipline was handed out. So yeah, I could see where he okayed that. I mean, does it change the way that I feel for him as a general, or or either as a person. No, I mean, because you're asking me to look at this in 1858 eyes.
Right.
I can't, I can't imagine owning a slave and beating them, but I also can't imagine running a plantation and trying to keep slaves in line. If that makes sense.
I mean, no, I mean it's I 100% understand, and I no, I that's and I think that's the problem on both sides of trying to, and that's ultimately why we can't have these kind of conversations, is because we don't have enough people that are willing to look at it that way.
Yeah, because some people, the first thing, the Confederates, they're evil, the clavering and stuff like that. And it's like, you're looking at this totally wrong way, and I point out to people all the time, I said, look, yes, the South had the slaves here, but our whole country bears the sin of slavery because they allowed it to come over. I mean, it was legal, in northern
The whole
states.
country is built. The whole country is built off of it. New
Off of
York
it.
City, the biggest city in the country in 1860, biggest city in the country throughout the entire country's history. Most of its economy was built off of slavery.
And then the worst thing besides slavery to me is they come down here, slaves are free, and then they're like, okay, you're free, go your own way and live your life. And here you have these people with no money, no skills, no jobs, and you just left them there to uh, be at the mercy of the sheriff,
Fend
the
for himself.
sharecropper.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's why still now in South Alabama, the Black Belts, you still have people who have never left.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why
South Georgia, same way.
and that's why we still have massive poverty, and in the Black community is because they was just left there. I mean, with nothing. Um, and hopefully one day we can move past that. It'll be a while. But until people can actually, like, me and you and other people, I mean, 'cause I love talking to you about it because you have the ability to look at it in those ways and in those eyes. Like, one of the best statements I ever heard you say is about Jefferson Davis. You said that was the smartest thing he ever did was not freeing the slaves. Because he realized what was going to happen.
Yep.
And I found out something, and then I'll let you go because I know it's getting late. Did you know that Alexander Stevenson, he had actually joined the Constitutional Union Party?
That was the John Bell party, right?
Yeah.
I could actually, yeah, because if I'm not, yeah. I mean, I did not know that, but I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I'd read that. Well, my friend, I guess I'll finish watching this and we will
Yeah,
get ready.
got a couple. Like I said, BYU is that's one that I kind of wasn't willing to pull the trigger on, but looks like BYU is actually looking to beat Utah.
It does.
Yep, and USC and Stanford still going on, so we got some pretty good games going.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I've already got called Alabama, Florida, and we'll pick our 5 and get ready for Thursday.
Sounds good.
All right, my buddy.
All right.
Bye.